So here I have a whole bunch of artwork. Um, One of the things that I want to do first off is I'll just talk about organization, right? So we started it out where we had our assets. I set up a prefabs folder, scenes folder, scripts folder. We can set up an artwork folder, and this is generally where I keep all my artwork. So in this case here, we can drag all of this stuff over to artwork. Um, Then sometimes I'll keep a miscellaneous folder for stuff that I just don't know where to organize it. Um, so sometimes I'll put materials or things in there that aren't really part of the main organizational structure. But I try to keep everything as organized as possible. You also see that I dragged over all the artwork, and now that I have all the artwork here, um, it's been imported. So let's take a look at one piece here. We'll look at this knight, for example. So in the knight, when we select it, you'll see that it has a texture type. If you set your game up to automatically be in the 2D mode, textures will automatically convert to any artwork you bring in will convert to a sprite, which is used for 2D and for the UI system. There's a sprite mode. There's the single or multiple. This is when you have different frames of animation. Packing tag, which I'll talk about in a little bit because now that the part of Unity 5, it's free to use the packager. So I guess at the end of this, I'll talk about that. Um, let's see what else. So then there's pixels to units. So this is an important one. Unity is broken up into these units. So this is a 1 by 1 unit. I think it's like one meter or something in 3D space. And as you zoom out, there's like bigger collections of it until you get to like, really far away, right? But when you zoom in, at the most, this is 1 unit. Now, one of the things that we can do is you can change the pixels per unit. So if I was to drag this guy out here, you'll see that he's relatively small, right? I think his main size, let's look at him. I forget what his size is. Here's 26 by 60, right? Uh, One of the things we could do is if we were to change his pixels to units to a 1 by 1, what's going to happen is he's going to get one really large, right? And you'll see that now every 1 pixel of this knight is now a single unit inside of Unity. So he gets really, really big. And this is important for when you're working with like really small pixel art. It may just make sense to do 1-to-1 pixel to units. I'm going to leave this at 100 for right now. Also, we can double click and it'll zoom right in and you'll see where he is. Now, when we zoom in, and you probably saw it when I made him really big, you'll see that he was really blurry. So one of the things that we can do here is this filter mode. And we can change the filter mode to point. You'll see it immediately cleaned up, right? So this is bilinear, which is the default. We go to point. And then also on the format, when we're working with sprites and pixel art, we want to go to true color so that it doesn't compress the colors. So here we hit apply to make sure that we save our changes. And now we have a nice sharp image. Now we sort of want to do this for everything, all of our artwork. So we can select all of our artwork and we can go and set its point mode and true color and hit apply. And that will now make sure that everything is configured correctly. The other thing is, let's take a look at Sprite Sheets. So this is a single sprite. I'm going to delete him from the scene. We don't really need him. Let's look at our monster. So here's our monster. He's comprised of 3 different images put into one image. And this is called a sprite sheet. So one of the things we can do is we can tell it that this sprite contains multiple sprites, and we can go into the Sprite Editor here, and then we can actually cut this out. So you can do this manually, and you can make your own sprites manually. You can do automatic, where it'll try to slice it. So if you had stuff with a lot of transparency, it's a little bit easier. I prefer to always use a grid. So for the grid, what we're going to set up is the width and the height of this, and in this case it's going to be 480 by 240, and we'll just hit slice, and this should slice it. Whoop. Oh, whoops, sorry, that was the whole graphic size. What I need to do is get the individual size. The individual size for them is going to be 160 by 240. So 160 by 240, we hit slice, and now you'll see there are 3 boxes. We got 1 box, 2 box, 3 boxes. Also in the slice, you'll notice that there's this offset and padding. I didn't do this in this game, but I generally set a 2-pixel padding and border of transparent pixels around the artwork. And the reason for that and why it's so important is that in Unity, and this is mostly a 3D engine issue on the GPU with textures, is that sometimes there's pixel bleed. So when you're doing an animation of a single texture, you'll notice that some pixels from the frame above it or below it might bleed in. So we set those to transparent, so if that does happen, you don't see any white line or flickering when that happens. So here I'm going to slice this. The last thing I wanted to talk about was this pivot point. All these guys have this pivot point set to the center. You can change the pivot point to any part of the artwork, so you can make it like upper left-hand corner, bottom center, wherever you need it. And that's just whenever you rotate the object, that's the center point of where it would rotate around.